Hey everybody, let's talk tarpon setups. This video is going to be my response video for all those questions in my comments section for what is that, what are you using, blah blah blah. So then I'm just going to paste this link so it'll make it a lot easier for me and answer a lot of questions and get more views. But let's start off by the baits, okay, the live baits that I utilize. The first bait I use is the live mullet, and there's specific reasons why I use them in this order. Okay, in March generally is the tarpon migration. They start coming down and fled into the Keys. That happens to coincide with the mullet run that starts in March as well. So you can tell kind of what their reason why they're down here and what they're feeding on, those live mullet. All right, so what'll happen is I'll use live mullet in the beginning. That's my primary go-to bait across the board. Then eventually those mullet are going to migrate on and start taking off. So then I convert over to the blue crabs. That becomes the second predominant bait that's around. They always love the blue crabs regardless, but when the mullet are here, it's just such an overwhelming amount down here. That's all they gorge themselves on, so I don't worry about the crabs. But once the mullet are gone, then they start focusing in on all those crabs, and that's what I start using for bait. Then what happens is you start getting to that middle summer, the water temperatures really peak up, and the water temperatures specifically on those flats really go high, where they're like high 80s, low 90s. And that basically sends all those crabs out of the flats and they're gone. So that depletes that food source. So then I convert over to the grunts and pinfish. Now I prefer grunts. I'm 100% grunts. I'll spend the extra time hunting down grunts over pinfish. I think because they know a pinfish is painful, they'll attack a grunt, and that's what I've come up with, because they just get 5 times the better reaction than I'd get from pinfish. So then I use the grunts for that, and that's the end tail of the season. All right, so then the fourth bait basically that I use is artificials. And I use basically Hobie 10-inch swim baits using the Hobie corkscrew tiled keeper hooks. Like all my plastics, I keep saying, I have a black and I have a white. The black is for nighttime and low light, evening, early morning, cloudy conditions. Brings a good contrast from looking up when there's no sun on there. So I use that. Daylight, bright sun, I use the white. Okay, matches the mullet that they're chasing after, good food source, that's what that is. Then I'll have a large paddle tail. If they are chasing pilchards, they're going after schooled bait fish, then I'll tend to throw something like this, a nice larger profile paddle tail. Even though if they're after glass minnows, they see something a little bit bigger. You're talking 80, 100 pound fish, they want something worthwhile. So that's my artificials there. Now for the live bait, catching and keeping. I use early in the season of the mullet run, I use a 5-foot cast net, basically because there are just thousands of mullet around and big schools. And if I throw my 7-foot net, I'm going to end up with 100 of them. And I need 4, okay? For my normal evening fishing trips that you're going to see a lot of, I just need 4 mullets. One is for a barracuda, one is for a shark, one is because the tarpon jumps off, and then one to land one. So I need 4. Okay, it's also the capacity that I use for each one of these 5-gallon buckets is that 4 to 5, so it works out perfectly. So I don't need to throw and catch 100 of them, I just need 4. So that 5-foot works out good just for that, but also it works really well because I can throw it a long distance and very accurately. So if they happen to be very skittish, if I could see them, I could throw that far and I can catch them. I'll take it off my wrist. I'll just throw the net, let it just fly out there, and then I'll go over there, grab the net, and bring it in. I could throw it that far, all right? And it's quick and easy, especially when they're hiding under the mangroves. I could throw that smaller net deep underneath there where the larger nets can be a problem. And the most important part is when you throw on a big school and you happen to miss, they just start exploding out in different directions. With a big net, you have to bring it in, you have to sort it out, you have to reset it, and they're gone. With the 5-foot net, I throw it out there. If I miss them, I bring it back, I reload it at the same time, I throw it, and I'm bound to get them on that second time, because then they're just scattered all directions, not knowing what to do, and I'm bound to catch them that way. So I love my 5-foot net. But like I said, later on when they start migrating out of here and there's a lot smaller pockets of mullet, then I go to the bigger one because I want to make sure those 1 or 2 that I do find that I totally envelope them and I for sure get them because I'll spend 4, 5, 6 hours just chasing mullet at that end of the mullet run there. Bait keeping, okay, hugely important. You must have a lid. If you're going to use a 5-gallon bucket or any type of container, has to have a lid when you use mullet. Mullet will jump out. You give it a small enough section that it's the size of their body, they'll find that opening, they'll jump out because they look for the sunlight and they'll jump for it because that's escaping. That's what they do, is they jump. Have to have a lid, but it's mandatory. Even a solid lid, like a Home Depot lid, won't work because if you open the lid, stick your arm out, there's openings on the side gap, they'll jump out of those. Trust me, it sucks. Learn the hard way. I get these. They're these, have a bait opening for it. You could stick your arm into it and they can't jump out the sides because your arm will block them. Grab your bait, shut the lid, and you're good to go. It gets so bad that I have to put my gallon of gas can or big water jug on top of the lid because they'll keep pounding it until it pops open and I can turn around and they're gone. I have nothing. The second style that I use is this drilled out one. And the way that works is, well, the 5-gallon bucket, the way it works is, if you haven't seen it before, I use a 5-gallon bucket. I drill a small hole in about a quarter of the way down and it creates a weep hole. I fill it full of water with the bait in it and it slowly leaks out. And it drains. Once it drains, I use my gallon Folgers bucket and scoop and put fresh water into it. That cycles that water, cycles out the oxygenated water and pisses out the depleted water. But then I have this second style here. And the way it works is I'll have 4 or 5 with my normal one on my kayak. If I'm doing a long night one or a long trip where I need a larger amount of bait, I'll bring a second bucket. I'll put 5 or 6 mullet in that bucket with this lid onto it. Then I'll submerge that bucket on its side and then I'll use my stakeout pole with the rope and just stake it on the flats nearby where I'm fishing. Maybe tie it to the mangrove submerged, and they're fine because it'll get total circulation and you could put more baits in there. Normally you don't want to have more than like 3 baits in there at a time. I use 4 because I'll put 4 in, baby them until I get set up, put one on the hook, cast it back out, and then I'm down to the 3 that will survive perfectly fine with a 5-gallon bucket. So that's the baits there. Okay, let's move on. Rigs, setups. This is my Shimano Teramar 7 medium heavy, Penn Conflict 4000, 20-pound braid. I have 4 different spools, so I have 4 different setups, but for tarpon, I wouldn't go less than like a 20-pound braid. For the big tarpon that I'm targeting, I rarely use this. This will just come into play if I want to throw that smaller swim bait. I see more juveniles around if I'm fishing along some mangroves and doing some schools that way, or if I just want to try something new, but it's just too light of a system. You really can't fight them very well and bring them in. It takes too long and it stresses the fish out. Plus, if you catch a tarpon on the flats and it's a runner, some will jump and hang around you and go in circles and then you're okay. But some you'll get that just go straight to Cuba. They don't know anything more except go to Cuba. And this doesn't hold enough capacity. And if I can't get up and going with them fast enough, it'll spill this out too fast. So I'd prefer not to use that too much. My main go-to ones are these 2. And these catch pretty much 95% of my tarpon. This is a spinning combo. It's the 7-foot heavy Shimano Teramar spinning with a Penn Conflict 6000. I run 65-pound braid. And this I utilize for casting those large hoagies. That's my casting, working those with those. I'll also use this for throwing blue crabs with a bobber. So I'll cast it out and then I'll feed this one. And then my next rod is my primary just live one. So this is the one that gets when I'm doing action, a lot of casting and so forth. My main live bait rod is this setup. Uses my Shimano Torium 16, basically my jigging reel, 65-pound braid. This is a Shimano TDR. It's the 8-foot 6-inch 2-piece medium heavy 15 to 30-pound line weight. It's a freshwater trolling rod, downrigger rod. It's a parabolic rod, so it gets that very big bend on it. I love this rod for jigging because it's such a noodly rod. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, okay, but gets great action. When it's on that bend, it's got constant torque on that fish, so I don't even have to do anything, and it plays really well. Reason why I like it for tarpon is that I could chunk out a big bait very easily because it's so flexible and long. I could pitch out a bait very easily, very far. Two, when I get that really hard impact bite from a tarpon on live bait and that initial blast run and the jumping and so forth is very violent, this long rod and being very flexible takes a lot of that, cushions it a lot. So you'll see a lot of people when they're fighting it, they say you have to bow to the king. You don't have to do it as much when you have an 8.5 foot rod that's very noodly. It'll absorb a lot of that shock, so you don't have to be so exact about it. Plus, these rods are $30. I buy them by 2 packs. You get them on eBay for $60 for 2 of them, and with free shipping. And they're dime a dozen. This one I've had for 4 years. Last year I broke my other one. I usually run a pair of them. So I'll be ordering another 2 packs coming up pretty quick here. And that is my rods and reel setups. Leaders, 60 pound and 80 pound. Most of the time I just go straight to the 80 pound. I don't use fluorocarbon when I'm using live bait. The reason why is when you have a natural acting, natural smelling, naturally vibrating bait, the fish tend to look and inspect them so much and not be so suspicious. Regardless of the swim bait actions and the new technology and all the new voodoos, they will never match the size perfectly, the appearance perfectly, the action perfectly, and the scent perfectly. And their reaction when a big fish is coming on them, they know that bait species is going to react a certain way by getting me the hell out of there, where a artificial is reel me back to the boat because you don't know there's a big fish just sniffing at it the whole way. All right, and that fish is going to know, why isn't this bait taken off? Because it should. Something's wrong, and it's going to start inspecting it, and you see the mono, and then they take off. That's when I use fluorocarbons when I'm using artificials. But I use the 60 and 80, the heavy weights, 2 reasons. One is for the chafing of the mouth and the face and the body rolling on the mono line. It'll wear through it, and eventually you'll chafe it and it'll break. So using that 80 pounds will give you more time before that happens. The second thing is that to not tire the fish out. Okay, you don't want to spend an hour reeling in a tarpon because you'll exhaust it, and there's a good chance that you're going to end up killing it even though it swims away. I don't like to do more than 15 minutes of fighting a tarpon. Okay, hammer them, bust them up, break their spirit, bring them in and release them and get them on this way. So that's what the 65 pound braid and 80 pound mono allows me to do. This stuff isn't going to break. I could just put a lot of weight on them and turn them and just get them wiped out really quickly, get them released and on their way. Hooks, I use 2 hooks. 90% of the time I use a 7/0 circle hook. These are the Mustad Perfect Circle inlines. I buy them by the 50 piece because I use them for everything. For my blue crabs, for the grunts, for the mullet, 7/0 circle hook, circle inlines. These are the 39944-BNs. 7/0 size, works perfectly, don't have hookup problems. I use these for the sharks, all my big fish, amberjacks, everything, so I know they work fine, but totally good. Only other time is if I'm getting a lot of misses with these circle hooks, I'm just not getting good hook sets, I'm missing a lot of fish, get a bit frustrated, I'll switch to a 7/0 live bait hook, and then I'll use that. And I don't like to use that a lot because it tends to more risk of gut hooking or deeper in the mouth hooking them. And when you get them in the circle hook, it tends to be on the outside of the mouth or in, but the hook and the line is on the outside of the mouth, so you have the reduced chances of getting cut off from the chafing. So just during frustration, I might do that live bait hooks, but most likely I'm using the 7/0 circles. That is it. That's all my stuff. Very basic. All my equipment is 4 years and running. Caught lots and lots of tarpon. I don't change it up because it works. Don't need to reinvent the wheel. that's it. Tomorrow's video, like last video, was doing recon for the Atlantic side tarpon baits and what's going there. Tomorrow is going to be recon the Gulf side, checking out my bait spots, checking out my tarpon spots, see if anything's moving in, and then going on the outside looking at the channels and then the outside Gulf lines to see if I see any rolling fish and what's going on there. And then after that, I can start targeting the tarpon. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.